Welcome to Bear With Us, the podcast where two women bravely explore the High Line.
One charming town and quirky event at a time.
We're here for the people, the stories, and the small moments that make this place special.
And don't worry, zero bears.
Probably.
Welcome back to Bear With Us, the podcast from Bear Paw Development, where we share the people, places, and projects that make North Central Montana so special. I'm Sara.
And I'm Paul, sitting in for Julea today. We're excited to shine a light, literally and figuratively, on one of Havre's most unique treasures, Havre Beneath the Streets.
We're joined today by Christy Owens, office manager at Havre Beneath the Streets. She keeps things running smoothly behind the scenes while also helping share the stories of Havre's history with visitors from all over. Christy, we're so glad you could join us. Welcome to Bear With Us.
Now, Christy, here's a fun one to kick things off. If you stumbled upon a bear in Havre Beneath the Streets, what room do you think it would claim as its den?
Ooh, Shorty's.
Shorty's.
That was a quick answer.
Whoa, you knew immediately where he'd be. Now tell us why Shorty's.
It seems to be a cozy little spot. And, we currently have a bear rug that lays on the floor in there as well. So
It would have a buddy.
it would have a buddy and be able to snuggle up and warm.
And Shorty's office is kind of like kept in the middle. It is kind of like a cave.
It is. It is.
What is Shorty's?
So Shorty was, it's his office. He was actually one of the kind of Havre's notorious gentlemen that did a lot of things. Some might think it was shady, but then he was also out for the little guy, so to speak. He did a lot of community things and looked out for those that were less fortunate and things like that.
As an Illinois native, I like to think of him as Havre's Al Capone.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good one.
And there's a bear rug in there.
Before we get a little too far into Havre Beneath the Streets here, tell us about yourself. Where'd you grow up? What's your background?
So I am from Havre, born and raised here, lived here many years, all my life. Tried to move away once, and I'm still here hanging out in Havre. I'm married, have two boys, and they both live here in Havre as well. And we're just currently, planting roots, continuing to plant roots here in Havre.
Now, usually Bear With Us is a podcast divided when it comes to this question, but today I have the fortunate ability to be co-hosting with a fellow Grizz. Are you a Grizz or cat?
Well, I would have to go with Grizz just because
Yay.
Take that, Julea.
Honestly, I could really not the biggest football fan, but if I have to choose, I probably lean more towards the Grizz. We kind of have a local Grizz kid from Havre there now, and he's about my son's age as well, and so kind of know that kid as well, and so I'm looking forward to maybe going to a game in the future myself. So,
Chrissy, that is a wonderful answer. Go Grizz.
Play into the crowd, but I like it.
There we go.
Christy, what got you into Havre Beneath the Streets? Now, my understanding is that you have been the director for a long time. What got you there?
Honestly, the day that I walked in the door, I was looking for a job, and Frank DeRosa, one of the kind of founding fathers of Havre Beneath the Streets and the Railroad Museum, was in there looking for someone to work in the office. And I was out job hunting, and I tell this story often to his family as well, that I walked in and said, "Hey, I seen in the paper you were looking for a secretary or someone to be here." And he said, "Sure, come on over and I'll show you what it's all about." He showed me how to book tours and answer phones, and he said, "I'll see you later." And I called my mom.
Oh, boy.
That's how it went. That is how it laid out. He left the building, and my mom was watching my currently the oldest at home. I hadn't had my youngest one yet, and I called her and I said, "I think I have a job." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "I don't know. This guy, he just like showed me everything, and he left the building. I'm pretty sure I have a job." And I did. And then he showed back up like an hour later and said, "Hey, show up this weekend." and somebody will be here to train you on everything else you know. And that was how I started there.
I love that. Every time I hear her tell it, I'm like, that's just bananas.
That's a great story. So how many years ago was that?
So my oldest was 9 months old, and so we're rolling on about 26th year here.
And give us a day-to-day rundown of what your role is at Havre Beneath the Streets.
The number one is we're, booking tours, talking and chatting up with the tourists that are coming through town. We're receiving calls. We get people that come from literally all over the world coming to visit us, and or even calling us and want to know what we're all about. So it's, kind of communicating with folks and letting them know what Havre Beneath the Streets is, what they can anticipate on a tour, and kind of the fun aspects of Havre as well, and why they should come see us when they're on the phone or when they're stopping in, encouraging them to stay and visit Havre Beneath the Streets as well as other places within Havre.
Christy, for those who don't know, what is Havre Beneath the Streets?
So Havre Beneath the Streets is basically a historical tour geared around the 1880s through the 1930s, and we'll take you down, giving you the history behind how it all got started. One of the reasons it's down there was in 1904, there was a fire that burned the downtown area. And from there, the businesses moved into their basements, creating passageways connecting. Some of it happened before the fire. There was legitimate as well as illegitimate businesses. So maybe some
Oh
of them
boy.
not so savory businesses that were down there at one time. But like I mentioned, it's geared around the 1880s to the 1930s. But the main cause was the fire in '04. And we basically give you the history of the businesses that were there. There's about we have 18 different displays of businesses that were in the current location or the surrounding area that we've brought in, just because of the importance of their Havre history, and want to share that with everybody.
And what's your favorite display?
Oh, I have a lot. uh, I would have to say I think the coolest one is the bakery. There's the oven and firebox that's in the wall still, so that's something that's kind of original, is original, and, I find that kind of unique, and, in the saloon, that's another fun area 'cause, you got your tales of the saloons and the businessmen there, and maybe some of them are little fun stories and some of them are true, we mix it up a little bit, but
Always colorful tales from a
yes,
saloon.
for sure, for sure.
Christy, I've only been to Havre Beneath the Streets. I haven't been to other communities that have similar attractions, but I have friends of mine that have gone to, Beneath the Streets in larger communities. And to a person, they say that this is one of the better places to go. It's more intact, it's more historically accurate. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that is a little bit of, feedback that we do get from, tourists that are coming through Havre. That is one thing that they do comment on is that Havre Beneath the Streets has, you're getting a lot more history and there's a lot more to see down there. Or there's some other sites that are great to see, but maybe they don't have a lot of the history or tales that they're sharing. Or you've got some that are, they've got a great history and tales, but you're not seeing a whole lot. So I think that's one of the combinations that we have here is, we're giving that the history and the information as well as, sharing that fun tale and making it interesting, as well as they're getting to see items that were in the location or surrounding area, and they're actually being able to immerse themselves into the tour and maybe imagining themselves being down there in that time period.
And I can confirm, I did go to the underground tour in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be very similar to the story and everything that we have here. It was primarily used for bootlegging. Um, and I did not enjoy it near as much as I have enjoyed. They did like it was theatrical almost. They like acted
Right.
it out and pretended to have like a shootout and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm really more interested in the actual history of it and what happened. So it was definitely a different experience, but I think this one takes the cake. And I have a prejudice against Moose Jaw 'cause I got kicked out of a hockey game that weekend,
Ooh,
so
yeah,
Oh,
there
they
we
don't like
go.
heckling.
were there bears involved in this?
No, not that I'm aware of.
See, in the summertime, I oftentimes see a long line of folks, I'm assuming out of area tourists, that are waiting to get into this for a tour. What is your visitation typically like during the summer months?
You know, our peak time is usually May through mid-September, and we're averaging in it within a year, we can see close to, 7,000 people in a year. And I'm going to say probably 75% of them are rolling through at that end of May, mid-September. We can see our peak month being July. You kind of tapers off. We are open year round. We've got shorter hours in the winter, but we still have people that are trickling in. Like this time of the year, we've got folks that are traveling intentionally because they're trying to miss the crowd, or, maybe they're an older crowd and they're wanting to maybe enjoy it as well with an older crowd, and maybe little less family in their group. They're looking for that smaller size groups, but we can't always guarantee that there's going to be a small size group. Sometimes we'll walk in that door and we have nobody on the page, and that 9:30 tour will walk out with 20 people. When we think we've got it figured out, we don't.
That's the story of life.
Exactly.
And one of the things that you guys do most every year, I know that it's kind of depending on some difficulties that you guys have had, we'll touch on here in a little bit, is the living history tours
Yes.
that happens. I love going to those, not just because you guys employ my spouse in them, and I like to tease him. But can you talk a little bit about those because they are super cool?
Yes, yes, he does get voluntold every year to come and
I
and
know
hang
that
out
you're
with us.
tell he's no he
He
enjoys
enjoys
it.
it a little bit. He enjoys a little bit. Yes. So we have for probably the last I think our first living history day I want to say was around 2008. We started with one of the former chamber members at the time. We were trying to look for different fun things to do and get a kickoff in tourism. So this was kind of something that we ourselves, as well as some of the other tourism groups around Havre, thought, well, why don't we have something called a living history weekend? And Havre Beneath the Streets, we started doing the living history day on that Saturday, the first weekend in June. And we have volunteers that are in the rooms, and we give them, a script or kind of an idea of the history of the room, and then we let them have a little fun within it, within reason, and
Not
then
too much fun.
right, right. So, and then we do have, some of the folks that are repeat uh, volunteers, and they've expanded on their rooms. They like to pick their room, and they do a little bit more outside the door kind of history research themselves, and they kind of ad lib to the area, which we think that's fun. That's great, and it's something fun that the families around the area enjoy. We do a discounted price that day, and it's kind of something that we started to kind of get the locals in the door, but we're also finding that there's a lot of people coming from all over starting to enjoy our living history day as well. But something that we, keeping it at a discounted price, kicking off the season, and kind of a hey, come on, Hammer. Come
Yeah,
and visit us. Check out the fun.
and I know my husband loves to pick his own room, and you know exactly which room he loves to pick.
Yes.
He loves to be Shorty Young, and he insists on keeping everything authentic. And he says that you just can't use anything else to duplicate the look of scotch that Shorty Young would be drinking.
Correct.
So,
So it's the real thing.
Well, may or may not be.
yeah.
You never know.
I would imagine that the infrastructure that you have down there is really difficult to maintain because you're underground. I mean, all of us that have buildings or houses or office buildings, it's hard enough above ground. But I know that you're going through a rehabilitation project. And I know that our office, including you, Sarah, were involved in securing some funds, right, through a grant
Correct.
program at the state of Montana. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so that was our sidewalk project that we started this project kind of way back in 2017. We had to move out of that area, which was directly underneath the sidewalk. Over time, it started to deteriorate, with weather and people that parking larger vehicles kind of up on that curb and things like that. It's over time it started to deteriorate. And we seen in 2017 that it just wasn't someplace we wanted to have our tours down there as well as our guides, for safety reasons. So we made a choice to move out of that area and close it down. And from there, we started a campaign of fundraising. And, we did a few fundraisers and then, we come across the grant um, program and then started working with your firm as well once we got that grant in place and going from there. So that was in 2021. Yes, correct. It's quite the process. We started the application in 21 and then, found out from there, hey, your application is good. You've been ranked. Now come and plead your case. And so yes, I went to the legislators session and we visited there as well as was Paul was hanging out there too, and a few others from around the state were really excited about Havre Beneath the Streets and had been there. So there was a lot of excitement within the legislative session when we were visiting about this, and I was pleading the case of why we needed the funds, and it was received well. And then from there, the steps to move forward, and we were granted the funds, and we have been moving forward from there. Once grant funds were secured and we signed all of the documents, dotted the i's, then that following in 2023 we were able to break ground on the sidewalk project. And we've kind of been trying to make some headway from there. We're getting closer to completing the project. We've ran into a few unexpected things that come with construction projects. If you've ever been dealing with a construction project, that I one that I wanted it done 2 years ago, but it's just not in the cards.
Well, 100-year-old buildings and you're underground, you're going to run into some snags probably.
Correct. Yes.
That we did.
Yes. Things we just didn't foresee with the construction itself. But yeah, and then there was also some changes that were made along the way with the structure. We have an engineer that's been on site as well, and which we want to make sure that this is something that's safe to the public. Is not to mention our tourists that are under there, but those that are walking on the sidewalk. It's a something that's public safety is huge. We want to make sure that it's done right, and it's solid. I'll tell you that it is solid.
It is. I was just down there with you probably a couple weeks ago. This is probably one of my favorite projects that I work on here. And I think the biggest thing about it is it really goes to show the perseverance needed for these kinds of projects. Just to give like a sense of how long we've been working on this, I was pregnant when we met.
Right.
And when we first started on this, and I am sending my daughter to kindergarten next year.
Oh, wow.
That is how long you and I have been
plugging along
and trying to figure it out. And we just met today about finding, located another funding source to kind of address some of the overages and the creative problem solving I think we've had to do.
Exactly. And Sarah's been the calm in the storm when I've come in here panicked and like, oh no, what do we do now?
Perseverance wins the day. I can remember when I first got involved in economic development, somebody told me that any project that is really worth your time is going to probably cost twice as much as you think it's going to cost, and probably take twice as long as you think it's going to take. And
Right.
my guess is we're there with
That's
this.
where we're at.
We're not, but I wish that Julea, no offense, Paul, I wish Julea was here for this part of the conversation because we have really stuck to the budget for the most part.
Yeah, surprisingly, we were kind of a little panicked when things started to roll out and the costs of things were starting to change from our original bid. Like we mentioned, it's a long process from point A to point B, and when you're submitting your application, you're going with that period of time, what the cost is, and maybe putting in a 10% increase. And there was a lot of change and fluctuation within that time period. So when we actually got down to purchasing the products for the construction, and we were quite fortunate that a lot of that had not shifted. So we were pretty on target with a few of those things, but there were some other things that we didn't anticipate that we needed to add or change.
Thank you, rain.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
there we go.
even, I mean, just today you came in and you're like, "Oh my goodness, I think we're gonna be over this amount." And this is what you're, because every time she's like, "No, no, no." And I was just like, "That's nothing." Like this that is
She's
gonna
like,
be the
"Don't worry."
easiest thing to find funding for. And Julia hates it. Whenever I talk to her about this, she's like, "How is like none of my projects are on budget." And I'm like, "Well, you know."
Well, we're a good team. There we go. What can we say, right?
Now, my understanding is that you are doing something unique and different coming up soon. Is that correct? Are you doing some ghost tours?
So yes, there's a couple of our board of directors that kind of have been spearheading what's called the unliving tours, and this is something new that we're bringing to Havre Beneath the Streets this fall. It is a fundraiser with all of the proceeds to go to Havre Beneath the Streets. So right now we've got a couple of dates out there. We've got a couple of different types of tours. We're gearing one of them around, more of a family oriented. Um, we've got like the 6 p.m. tour. So the date, going back to the dates, what we have available is October 24th and 25th coming up here. And we've got two tour time slots that will run in those evenings. So the 6 p.m. tour will be with adults and more family oriented, geared that way. And those are a $20 ticket. And then kids ages 12 and under will be a $10 ticket. And then we have the 8 p.m. Tour, and that'll be kind of the booze tour, and that's adults, and you'll get a drink token with your tour as well. And that's going to be a $40 ticket, and that'll be a little bit maybe geared towards adults.
A little more saucy.
Yeah, there we go. We do have not too over the top though. We've got some youth that here at Havre High that are kind of teaming up together to be our actors, and you got producers, actors, script. I mean, it's all key components that are happening here, and we're trying to kind of get everything finalized and the you know T's crossed, I's dotted. But it's something that should be coming together and fun and different.
Just in time for Halloween.
Perfect.
Are they going to be pretending to be ghosties or zombies or what's the deal
Well,
here?
I don't know. And you might have to wait and see. Kind of maybe in the title or the unliving, or the haunted. Be ready,
I don't do scary movies well, so I'll need the booze tomorrow to get me through that.
right?
That's wonderful. So all of the proceeds of these tours go to the underground. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Oh,
So
that's wonderful.
we're kind of working on a low budget for this event. So we're we're you can contact our office to book those tours, and we're taking reservations for those. And if we find that there's a call for more, and we have the abilities, they would try to open up some more. But that's kind of in the future, and what we have available for our spooks or our scary individuals.
Ghosties.
Yeah, ghosties. There we go. That's the words.
Goblins.
The goblins, yes, yes, if the goblins are available, and that might be um, something that we're kinda being a little bit, some flexibility in there. Um, something new, there's always gotta be something different, and maybe things we won't foresee or things that will need to change in the future, and we hope that maybe this'll, be something that we can, expand on in the future as well. But yes, all the proceeds will go back towards Havre Beneath the Streets. And this goes to keeping the lights on, literally keeping the lights on. As Sarah mentioned before with our project, we've had a little water this last summer, and yeah, if you're from Havre area, the rains have been. We've prayed for rain for how many years, and it all came this summer.
The prayers were answered all at once.
Yes, they were. Would have been cool to spread that out, but it all came at once. And so, with that, we did have some flooding down there. And, when that happens at Havre Beneath the Streets, when we have the flooding, it's not something where, okay, it flooded and we can go business as usual while things are being cleaned. That's not the case. We have to shut our door and go down there, get it dried out, clean, tied, so we can bring the public back down in there, as well as having it clean for our staff. So that's kind of our number one priority is when that happens is we wanna make sure that it is good to go so unfortunately, we did find several days where we were closed during our peak season, and that's been a little rough for us this year. It does,
And you have to make sure that there's no water damage to the exhibits too.
Correct, correct. So there's been, my s actually, my I'll throw it out there, myself and my husband and my son have kinda literally been voluntold. We've been down there at 2 AM and several hours just trying to keep ahead of the water. And then we've had some others that have volunteered, as well as, our contractor, CT Smith. He's had to volunteer. He did volunteer a few times as well, kinda helping us sump up some water and things like that, keeping ahead of things, so give a shout out to him and his team, trying to help us out to keep things dry as well, putting in temporary pumps when the rains are coming and, we're walking over hoses it's like, "We're not rolling this hose up, it's our lifeline, people." So, yeah, we wanna definitely give a shout out there as well. It's been it's been interesting for sure, for
So
sure.
we can all support Havre Beneath the Streets with these unliving tours, correct?
Correct,
Now
correct.
tell us again what the dates are, and if somebody wants to sign up, what do we have to do? Do we have to sign up ahead of time or just show up?
So we would like you to sign up ahead of time, just because 'cause they're trying to kinda get an idea of, how many people are gonna be in the groups, split the groups up from there, and also kinda seeing what the interest is on this as well, and if there is a possibility of adding things or that, if that's a possibility, they wanna know what the call or the interest. Definitely, we're asking you to pre-book these and pay for your tours. If there again, you can contact our office at 658888, and we can, tell you the dates and times and prices and get that set up for you as well. Um, and if maybe this isn't something you're interested in doing, you can always donate to Havre Beneath the Streets. You can stop by our door at 123rd Avenue and drop off a couple of dollars. We will be grateful for any of that. Or you can go to our website. We do have a donate button link on our website as well. That's haverbeneaththestreets.com. You can go in there and click to donate to us at any point in time. So yeah, or drop a check in the mail, same address, 123rd Avenue.
But you mentioned that, these kind of fundraisers keep the lights on. But another important thing they do is they give you guys match dollars for these grants that we're looking for. Um,
Correct,
a lot of
correct.
people think that grants are free money, and I think you've definitely found out working
Oh,
on
yeah,
this project that there's no such thing as free money.
exactly.
But you usually have to have some sort of match contribution, to show skin in the game. Um,
Absolutely. Yes, especially with the sidewalk project that we had. We had to it was like an 80-20% match, so we had to do fundraising ahead of the game before we could even considering filling out the document. So, you these grants, yeah, like you said, they're not free money. They want you to have, like you said, skin in the game or stake in it, and so you gotta have a little jingling, on the side when you're planning or anticipating on, you know, applying for any of these grants that are out there.
Christy, I know that Havre Beneath the Streets, in and of itself, is such a phenomenal place. But you're also part of kind of a consortium of different, uh, not necessarily events, but venues here in Havre, be it the Buffalo Jump or the Clack Museum or Florida Cinnabon or the cultural aspects of Rocky Boy. How does Havre Beneath the Streets fit into a lot of what we have in this area?
I think there's with that, it's just have her history alone, and I think one thing is tied to another. We on our tours, we talk a little bit about the Clack Museum, and then we're encouraging people to visit the Clack Museum as well as on our tour we're talking about the Fort Assiniboine and the Buffalo Soldiers, and we're encouraging people to head out there as well. And then the buffalo jump, it's something that's just history alone. It's kind of a cool little site, but, we're within our tour itself, we're tying in all of the other areas, within Havre, talking about the Bear Paw Mountains, the Rocky Boy Reservation as well, and, um, that's kinda one of the things for us is Havre Beneath the Streets is kind of a, you said, if I wanna use a conglomerate of 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 Havre and Havre history, and it all ties together, to a great story within Havre that we can share.
Just talking a little bit about the tours because you mentioned, some of the things that are brought up in it. I recently went with we hired a company to do our brand for Havre, and they wanted to go see Havre Beneath the Streets, so I went with them. I think I've done the tour more times in the past year
Right?
with this project than I have any time before that, but it's super cool, and each time is like a different experience. But this one was really funny because we joined in with a classroom, like a class of kids that were doing it, and some of the sections of this tour can get a little spicy. And at one point, one of your tour guides was you could tell she didn't want to, like, short us the information of the tour. I
Right.
think we were in the brothel, and she was like, "And this is where," and she kinda looked around, and I was like, "I think we know." Like, I think the adults here have pieced it together. What is your most memorable moment from doing these tours over the years?
I would have to say, when you mention, like places like the Bordello is, uh, we actually had this was several years ago where we had a lady come through there, and she walked in the door and was like, "Wow, a hospital," and everyone else in the crowd was like, maybe not so much," and the tour guide hadn't even had a chance to explain what it was, so there is still some out there that don't have, maybe they're not so worldly as some others, so, we do not let the cat out of the bag, but we give it to people straight. There's no, we don't go into great detail. We're not explaining anything to anyone's children.
No. You're not learning the ins and outs of some of these rooms. They're just,
Right, they're there, and like you mentioned with the school groups or the kid groups, we have a lot of school groups that come through and they do field trips, and we kind of talk a little bit more in those areas, about how at one point in time it was a Chinese safe house, and then we kind of leave it from there, and we don't go any great details. Um,
and I think that's fair, but, it is a cool part of our history.
But, and we do a lot of times if there is more kids on the group, we'll reach out to the parent. The guides are very good about reaching out, taking the parent aside and be like, "Hey, this is a bordello, or we've got a saloon. What are your feelings?" And some parents are like, he knows or she knows a little more than you think, and we're good to go. Okay, then." And some others are like, "Well, let's just kinda move on from that." Okay, cool. We address it as it comes. Our guides are very good about that, so.
If you had a crystal ball and you looked 10 years down the road, what would you want to see out of Havre Beneath the Streets? What would it look
I would foresee definitely our sidewalk project done,
Both in
completed
10 years.
completed and moved back in there and, moving full speed ahead with our other extra events like our living history events, getting those back on track, and our holiday stroll that we haven't been able to run as regularly as we wanted to, kinda getting some of those things back on track, in the future, and, also being able to, there's just a lot of, like, little repairs and things that need to be done day to day that, um, right now, there's some things because of funding, we just have a Band-Aid on it, I mean, there's nothing dangerous down there or anything like that, don't get me wrong there, but there's just things that need to be addressed or, tightened up or maybe a coat of paint or things like that, it all comes down to taking care of it in the end, we have a great staff that, um, day to day, they're tidying up and dusting and mopping and cleaning and things like that, but, I mean, it takes kind of a small little village to keep that going, and, yeah, right now, I mean, I have a wonderful staff that is they're phenomenal, and they're tour guides, they're answering phones, and, they're getting all the word out there or where to travel around in Montana, and then they're going downstairs to sweep and mop a floor, so it's a great, it's a team that's kind of pulls it off day to day, and I would hope that maybe that team will grow within the next 10 years. And yeah, that's just some of the things hopefully in the future. But number 1, yes, the sidewalk be done, and we will be walking through there.
It will happen.
It almost is.
Yeah,
We're
getting
right
close,
there.
we're getting close, so
One of my favorite things to look at or take a little peek at whenever I'm there is you guys have a map and it shows where everybody has come from that comes to there, and it is full. It is
yeah.
crazy how many international people have come to
Yes.
Havre Beneath the Streets. What is the most obscure place that somebody has come from that you remember off the top of your head?
Antarctica.
No way.
Yes. Yes, straight up, yes, there was a guy that came from Antarctica. I was there the day that he came through, and I'm like, "You're from where?"
You a polar bear?
Is that by Butte?
A little higher, Paul, a little higher.
Yeah, I didn't know people inhabited Antarctica.
Yes, yes, so
Wow.
yep,
That's
there
a long way from Havre.
just slightly, yes, yes,
I
and
think it's warmer than Havre
Oh
sometimes.
boy, in February it might
yeah,
be.
yeah, and then I also another one that sticks in my mind, was, maybe not necessarily an odd place, but from Australia, there was a guy that came in, and he specifically geared his whole trip to the United States to come to Havre to visit Havre Beneath the Streets, and I this is when I was
Incredible.
pretty new to Havre Beneath the Streets. I looked at him and I was like, "What? You come to Havre?"
Of all the things.
Yeah, like, he's like, "No, really, truly," he goes, "This was my destination, and I geared my whole trip around coming to see Havre and Havre Beneath the Streets." And I
That's
was like, "Well,
great.
that's pretty cool."
That's great. You may remember that a year ago, we brought in economic developers from throughout the state. We held our fall convention here,
Correct.
and we had people from all over Montana that took this tour. And to a person that we talked to, they were raving about this. They just couldn't believe it. They
Awesome.
had heard about it before, but most of them,
And some of the feedback we got from them on like the form, the how was the conference form that
Right,
you fill
right.
out at the end, a lot of people were saying that the Havre Beneath the Streets tour was the highlight
Right,
of the
awesome.
conference.
of the whole
Awesome.
thing.
Yeah, and I think that some people are just surprised as to what they see down there. I mean, you're spending an hour the tour takes an hour, and you're spending an hour down there, but really an hour is just not nearly enough time for I mean, I'll still walk through there today, and like I said, I've been there for over 26 years, and I'll walk through there, and I'll be like, "When did we get that?" And I'm the one who's receiving a lot of these items that are coming through the door, but there's just so much to see down there and, the history that's there. And, yeah, then we've got a lot of items that are, one of a kind as well, so and yeah,
And
pretty cool.
I love how this is just something that I remember from one of the hundreds of tours I've taken, it seems lately, but one of the tour guides was telling us there's this one section where they have like the old post office boxes. And there was a little old lady on the tour and she came in and went right to one, and it was her childhood post office box, and she remembered the code and
Yes.
opened the door.
That's
Yes.
incredible.
And we actually that you mentioned that, we actually had this summer, we had a couple that came through, and, so the post office is not currently located in their it's like what I like to call the displaced display, because, it was one of those that was in the sidewalk area that's under construction, so but we still have the boxes moved to a different area even though we have the whole post office area is dismantled, but the boxes themselves are still in a different area, and we had a couple that came through and they asked, they said, "Hey, our grandmother had, this letter and she wants to put that in there." It was her basically from her family, she had gotten this box, and they went through there and they opened it up and threw a letter in there this year. Yeah,
That's unbelievable.
yeah.
That's a great story.
So, yeah, little tidbit there. So, and that's another thing that people that locals that go through there, they can take a little gem when they leave from there that, "Hey, that was my grandma's coat that was in there," or, "My dad donated that chair or desk," or whatever. So, that's kind of fun too, where we've got family members and locals roll through Havre and they kinda reminisce, you know.
And some of the names mentioned of the people that are involved in the history, they're still family names around here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yes. It's like, well, one of the things, like, the still, I mean, that for the longest time, that family didn't wanna talk about, or throw their name out there because, I mean, it was one of those things way back in the day, it was maybe frowned upon, but it was something that, I mean, it meat and potatoes on the table. It 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 fed the family, so it was something that the family was proud of, but they were a little nervous about putting it out there, but as of recently, they came and visited and were like, "Yeah, we're those
That was us.
people."
It is us.
Yes, yes. So, but, yeah, but little
But
fun.
yeah. What do you think Havre Beneath the Streets and the Railroad Museum for that matter, because that's another portion of this. What do you think it means to the community?
I would hope that people would, locals would cherish the fact that we are holding on to the history of Havre and sharing that with others. Like I mentioned, with some of the locals having artifacts or pieces from their family there. I would hope that Havre as a whole still holds it as a treasure. I mean, it's something that should be treasured.
Sarah talked about the Railroad Museum. Now, I know that we're focused on Havre Beneath the Streets, but there is a railroad museum associated and attached to this, correct?
Correct, correct. So that is where our actual office is located, inside the Railroad Museum at 120 3rd Avenue. And the Railroad Museum they moved the office of Havre Beneath the Streets up. Used to be on the corner of the block, of 3rd Avenue and 1st Street, but when uh, Havre Beneath the Streets acquired the building, um, where the Railroad Museum is, they at that time, those board members that were involved and some of the founding fathers of, like Frank DeRosa and Lyle Watson and a few other name drops, I can't remember them all because I've been there a hot minute, but, there was a lot of people involved, in the beginnings and, getting it off the ground, and this was something that, a few of them, saw the importance of the railroad to Havre, and they wanted to share the railroad history as well, so they acquired that building. It was actually donated from a family, and it had been at the time, it had been empty for quite a while. And so there was a lot of cleanup and restoration that had to be involved, getting that building back to where it is at the moment. They got into the building in, 1998, then they actually opened the office in there in 1999, but they started moving in that time, there was quite a few, um, railroad historians, uh, some local guys that retired rails, got together, volunteering their time. It's kind of a menagerie of sorts or a hodgepodge of railroad things. It is more railroad Great Northern dominated just because of our location, but, with the thought behind it was any kind of railroad memorabilia and highlighting the railroad, um, you know, with its importance to our area.
And it's so super fun to poke around when you're waiting for your tour,
Right?
like
Yeah, yeah.
just kinda looking around at everything. You've got a toy train, not a model train. Oh my
Oh, yeah,
gosh, they're
yeah.
not
Whoa, whoa,
toys.
whoa. Yeah,
Whoa.
lots of train, yes, stand
How
corrected.
dare I?
Oh, yes, there's an 8-wheel scale train layout that's on the main floor, that the railroad the Pacific Junction Railway Club, um, started that several years ago, and there's still, railroad club members that take care of it. They have that set up so we can pretty much run that every day, and then there's also a train layout in the basement of the railroad museum, but they only are able to open it up, maybe like festival days or holidays. They have to be down there, have that one open, but they actually have it all set up upstairs where we can, you know, run it on a regular.
I'm a little offended. Uh, I have been in every back room and every little inch, I feel like, of the Railroad Museum and Havre Beneath the Streets through the duration of this project, and I did not know there was one in the basement too.
Oh, wow, you need to come back and visit me again.
You gotta
I'll
go
be
over
back
there.
down there. You'll probably
You
see
gotta go
me.
over there for sure.
Come on over I'll give you a sneak peek.
And I feel like we should have asked this at the very beginning, and it popped in my head for some reason at the very end. When did these tours start?
Tours actually started in, as the story goes, there was some business owners, within the downtown area that knew of the underground and started to kind of research the history in about 1989. And then these business owners within that block, they started renovating and things cleaned up and set up. And then they reached out to some local historians as well, and got information of um, the businesses that were in the area or the surrounding area, and started collecting a kilometer of the history. And they actually opened up for tours in 1994 was when they ran their first tours.
For some reason I thought it was older than that.
I would imagine you'd have to be pretty careful in digging beneath buildings, though, to make sure that you're doing it properly.
Yes.
That had to be some
I mean, I wasn't on the ground floor of getting out. I mean, I've been there a few years, but I wasn't privy to that section. Yeah, I've heard it was kind of interesting getting things ready to roll. And yeah, they did from what I understand, they did a lot of sneak peeks and tours and walkthroughs. And I still have a few people that roll through and they talk about how, oh, well, I do so and so, and I got on the ground, tours before they had tours, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I believe it. They did. They just showed it off, and got the word out there. And then they said they started running regular tours in '94,
It's such a cool concept to have underground. It's an
right?
underground city,
Right?
basically.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so fun.
I'm not sure any other place in Montana that has an underground, is there?
I have heard of some similar, but I kind of recently that have popped up, but I'm not sure the extent of them or if they're still in the groundwork of it or
So this is unique.
definitely to have her.
Never has.
Yes, there we go. An old slogan.
I am super excited about the unliving tours. I think that sounds like so much fun, and it's such a fun way of supporting Havre Beneath the Streets. And then you've got a Facebook page, you've got your website. You guys have events frequently.
We do, yes. Like I said, like I mentioned, we have the living history day in June. We try to do that, and then the holidays. We try to do something around the holidays to bring people in as well. And so we're anticipating now once things settle down and we get all that sidewalk done, we'll be able to go back to business as usual, and maybe expand on some more events. But yeah, that's what's slated on the calendar. Is this coming up in the next month or so? And yeah, like I said, that's an opportunity to something different, and fun, and we'll go from there. And like I said, if it's not something you're interested in, and you still want to give back to Havre Beneath the Streets,
Please
stop
do.
in. Yes, absolutely. Stop in, visit our website. So after our festival days in Havre, we'll be rolling into our winter hours. So we are open year round. We want to make sure that people know that we're here, and we have tours that are available. We just have shorter hours, Monday through Saturday, open 10 to 4, and then we call the guides as needed for the tours. So reach out to us, give us a call, stop in, and if we have a guide available, we are do our best to try to get you on a tour as you're rolling through Havre, or maybe you got some visitors pop in for the holidays. Give us a jingle, and we'll get you down there on a tour.
It's a fun way to spend an hour of your
Right?
day.
Very
Exactly.
exciting.
Well, Christy, thanks so much for joining us today and for sharing all these stories of Havre Beneath the Streets and of all the ways that people can support you guys. It's such an important part of our history here in Havre.
Thank you.
And for anyone listening who wants to learn more, book a tour, or support upcoming events, including the ghost tours, be sure to check out Havre Beneath the Streets. You will not regret it.
And that is it for this episode of Bear With Us. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back soon with more conversations about the people and projects that make North Central Montana shine.
Until next time, thanks for bearing with us.